What's up, guys? This is Xander Bennett from the Rare Candy, and today we are doing the deck profile for the Eevee, Snorlax, Gengar, and Mimikyu Malamar deck that I'm just going to refer to as Tag Team Malamar from now on, that we did on the most recent testing grounds. This is just a new take on an older archetype. It reminds me most of the deck that Rukon played to a lot of success, that particular Malamar version, but just with a handful of changes because we're playing our tag team Pokemon. So let's check it out and see what is different with these new cards. First off, starting off with a 4/4 Malamar line. Malamar just being the support Pokemon that makes this deck run. Psychic Recharge, just such a powerful ability to be able to get back our energies from our discard pile. We play 8 Psychic Energies that we can get back with this ability, and it's very good. So in terms of making this the Tag Team Malamar deck, we have 2 Eevee Snorlax GX and then 1 Mimikyu Gengar GX. Eevee Snorlax GX is really good versus the evolution matchups of Standard, and Mimikyu Gengar is just a pretty solid attacker all around. We do have a handful of other attackers, but these are the namesakes of the deck. So Eevee Snorlax is a 270 HP colorless basic Pokemon that is weak to fighting, has no resistance, and 4 retreat costs, and it has 3 attacks. So the first attack, you can attach an energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon. Then the middle attack, Dump Truck Press, for 4 colorless, does 120, and if you're attacking an evolution Pokemon, like if they're an evolution and they're active, you do 120 more. And then the GX attack for 4 colorless does 210, and if you have an extra energy attached to it, you draw until you have 10 cards in your hand. So a pretty good card overall, especially great versus things like Zoroark, where you can just do 240 damage to knock them out. It just takes really big knockouts against evolution decks very quickly, and is just one of the better attackers that we get to use with Malamar. Then the Mimikyu Gengar GX. This card definitely impressed me whenever we were using it for testing grounds. It is a 240 HP Psychic Basic that has 2 attacks, weak to dark, resistant to fighting, and has a 2 retreat cost. So the non-GX attack for 2 Psychics is Poltergeist. Your opponent reveals their hand, and this attack does 50 damage times the amount of trainers in their hand. That includes items, supporters, and stadiums. So this is not necessarily as reliable of an attack as always, but with how many cards decks are drawing right now, you can figure out that you can get to decent numbers with it and just factor how many cards are in their hand. Then the GX attack for 1 Psychic says that your opponent cannot play cards in their hand, and if you have 1 additional Psychic Energy attached to it, both players draw until they have 7 cards in their hand. So the combo there is that if you have 2 Psychics on it, you can make both players draw until they have 7 and then take a knockout with all the trainers that they have in their hand. But just being able to use this turn 1 with a switch or an escape rope is really good to make it almost as if you went first. If you think it's a matchup that you don't necessarily need to use your GX attack in. It was very effective, and just kind of, if your opponent has only 1 basic of a certain kind that you need to get rid of, you can do it that way. But also maybe on in the later parts of the game, if they're just going to play a Guzma to win, you can use this to stall a turn. It's a pretty good GX attack that ends up being used a lot. I would say that between that and Moon's Eclipse, that is the second most used GX attack in the deck. So moving on more into our more mainstay Pokemon of the Malamar archetype, we have 1 Marshadow GX. Marshadow GX, just a pretty common card to see in these decks. The ability lets it use the attacks of your basic Pokemon in your discard pile. Then that's primarily the only part of this card that matters. So we can copy all of the attacks of our tag team Pokemon without being punished for having a 3-prize Pokemon in play. We only have a 2-prize Pokemon in play. So a pretty relevant card to use. We can also use that card to copy Dawnwings GX, which is a card that Malamar decks have seen for a while. Dawnwings GX just having that invasion ability to give you a rush-in effect whenever you need it, but also Dark Flash, just 3 Psychic for 120 and no resistance, really good. But Moon's Eclipse is what this thing is known for. If your opponent is ahead on prizes, you do 180 damage, and you do not take any effects of attacks on your next turn. So just being able to brick wall their turn, force them to find a Guzma, ends up being really good. You can also copy that with Marshadow GX to use that attack, and then maybe go into one of your tag team attackers immediately. Or you can also go into Necrozma GX, which Prismatic Ray just does a big chunk of damage to your opponent's Pokemon if you have a bunch of Psychic Energy on there. Light's End also could be relevant in a mirror match situation. because you prevent damage from their colorless Pokemon. So that makes it so that Eevee Snorlax hypothetically couldn't attack it, which is really funny of a interaction to think about. Then we have one Tapu Lele GX, just good for what it's always good for, just being able to search out supporters. We can get this off of Mysterious Treasure, and we can get it with Ultra Balls, so just a really good out. I think only one is fine because we play a handful of draw supporters and acrobikes, so we can get there whenever we need to. But very good resource to have. Then lastly, as our only one prize GX attacker in the deck, Giratina. Giratina is used just to kind of mix up the amount of prizes that your opponent has to take. You can make it harder for them to win the game because you have 3 prize attackers, 2 prize attackers, and then a single prize attacker that you can get back whenever you need to. The damage off of Distortion Door doesn't necessarily matter, but being able to get it back whenever you need to is what does. And then Shadow Impact, just doing a flat 130, isn't necessarily taking any big knockouts, but it might two-shot something that matters, or with Choice Band and math from other cards, becomes something more relevant. So moving on to our supporters, we have 3 Lily, just as our best turn 1 supporter that we can play, 3 Choice Band 3 Cynthia to shuffle and draw 6 cards, just another great supporter to have access to. 3 Guzma, just to switch out our Pokemon, allow us to Psychic Recharge some more onto something that we need to Psychic Recharge onto. 2 Erica's Hospitality, just another great card. Erica's Hospitality says that if you have 4 cards in your hand after you play this card, so 5 cards in your hand when you play it, you draw a card for each Pokemon that your opponent has in play. This is really good just because there are so many decks that want to put a ton of Pokemon in play, but we don't play the super high numbers of it as we might play Cynthia's and Lily's just because it's not as great on turn 1. And then lastly, 1 Acerola, just because since we're playing these GX Pokemon that are ridiculously large, we can heal all the damage that is on those and reuse them or go into an attacker that gives your opponent less prizes. Going into the items for Mysterious Treasure, just to search out almost everything in the deck. 3 Ultra Ball, just to continue searching for stuff. Mysterious Treasure searches for everything that's not Eevee Snorlax and Marshadow, so generally we're fine having more of those, but also we have our outs to those Pokemon. Then we have 3 Acrobike, just to up our consistency of our deck. 2 Rescue Stretcher to get back our Inkays and Malamars, but also since we play so many one-of attackers, we want to be getting those back in the instances that we need them. 2 Altar of the Moon. Altar of the Moon is it's not a great card, but it's a good enough card that we're willing to play it. It matters because there are so many frustrating stadiums in Standard right now, like Black Market and Wonder Labyrinth in this format, and then also coming from this format, there's Thunder Mountain and Heat Factory. We don't want to be leaving those stadiums in play, so we're fine playing this. And also with Eevee Snorlax having a 4 retreat cost and Mimikyu Gengar having a 2 retreat cost, we need to do anything that we can to get these larger Pokemon out of the active. 2 Switch, just as a switching effect to move our Pokemon around. Like I just said, Eevee Snorlax has a large butt, so we want to get it out of there. 2 Choice Band, just to up our damage. And then a handful of one-ofs. We have 1 Escape Board, just as a retreating method that we can use to retreat an Inkay or a Lele. 1 Adventure Bag. Adventure Bag searches for our Choice Bands and our Escape Boards when we need them. So it's our 3rd out to a Choice Band, our 2nd out to an Escape Board whenever we need it. So it just ups the consistency of your deck, giving you that selectivity that you need in only 1 slot. And then 1 Pal Pad used to get back primarily your Acerola, but also other important supporters in your deck, like Guzma and just your normal draw supporters. Then to round out the list, there are 8 Psychic Energy, as mentioned earlier. Sorry about the stutter. Just to Psychic Recharge onto your Pokemon. More of these would not hurt because you have more attackers that rely on Psychic Energies than you do the 3 DCE that you play. But I don't necessarily know if I would switch to a 9 and 2 because you really need double colorless to attack with the 4 energy cost of Eevee Snorlax's main attack. But this is the deck. Thank you guys for watching this video. Be sure to leave any questions that you have in the comments of this deck profile. And if you haven't watched the Testing Grounds video for this deck or the deck profile for Double-A Genesect, you definitely should do that. Feel free to like and subscribe to this video and check out the Patreon if you are interested in supporting awesome content like this. Thank you. Xander Bennett signing out.